Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the webinar on the Cape Town Special Rules Area. My name is Dylan, and this is series number 2 in our Special Rules Area RT and airspace familiarization. Now, I'm looking at coming into the room. If you guys have had a chance to have a look at the procedure and the process we followed for Johannesburg. That was our first area that we focused on. And during that presentation, we had a little vote, and the outcome was to discuss Cape Town next, and that's why we're here. So just basically to let you know, there's myself. Obviously, I'm talking to you, and next to me is Marlene. She's on IT, and I'm just the guy that has to talk. Easy job. So what I want to just give you a very quick breakdown is, thanks, Henk. Henk says he can hear me. I should have asked you guys that. So from Henk's response, thanks very much. And maybe if you guys can see the screen, somebody just say yes and let us know that you can see the screen as well. Robin, or see the screen? Patrick, thank you very much. So we've got a few yeses there. Come the yeses now. Okay, thanks very much, everybody. So just to give you an idea, this is a recording that we've put together for the Cape Town Special Rules Area. We're running the same procedures we did for Johannesburg. This is going to last for approximately 32 minutes. On Cape Town Special. After the recording, I know Joburg, because we're doing a once-off recording, I noticed that there's one or two things that I've missed out in my presentation. So I'm going to add that after the video feed, and then following that, I'm going to. We've got two special offers available as well. We'll talk a little bit about that, and we'd also like you to please participate in our poll vote for the next sector that you guys would like me to talk about, and obviously specific to special. So information coming through now, so we're going to kick off straight away with the video. And remembering we're still new to this whole webinar, so if we have any glitches as we go along, we'll just give us a few moments to correct, and we'll fix it up. Enjoy the recording, and we'll see you on the other side of the recording. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Talking Radio's second edition in our Special Rules Area webinars. And today, as per the request from the vote that we held in our first webinar in Joburg, you asked me to bring you more information on the Cape Town Special Rules Area. Now, this is a recording, and you would have heard me speaking to you just now to introduce it. If there are any errors in this recording, I'll correct it at the end, but it shouldn't be. This airspace is not as intense as that of Johannesburg's, but it still has some procedures and things which you need to be well aware of if you're going to make use of this airspace or fly in this airspace. Remember, this presentation is not specifically just for fixed-wing pilots. It's for all types involved in the general aviation community. So it includes helicopters, microlights, light sports aviation, and drone pilots. So if we were getting specific in terms of regulation, it would be Part 61, Part 62, Part 68, and Part 101. So this afternoon session is focusing specifically on the Cape Town Special Rules Area. Let's move on to the slide itself. and get going. So there you see there's the Cape Town Special Rules area itself. I'll be using a red marker pen just to highlight certain parts of the airspace as I go along. What we've done here is with the Special Rules area on the right hand side, you'll see, let's just get my little red pen here and underline it. You'll see that I've included an extract from the AIP, and this is from your ENR2 section of the AIP, which refers to the Cape Town Special Rules area. Now that's a lot of information for you to go through and to try and identify those coordinates, etc., etc. So that's what this webinar is about, is to make it as easy as possible for you to identify with what exactly is being said. The chart that you've got, the aeronautical chart, that's a 1 in 500,000 aeronautical chart. And if you look over here, you'll see this line that's going along here from top to bottom. That is representing the Cape Town Special Rules area, focusing on the left to the west and, of course, to the east. It doesn't just stop there, though. It's also extending towards the north and towards the south. And that's what we have to focus on specifically with procedures for each. These dotted lines that you see going around the board here on this chart, that's representing the Cape Town Special, the Cape Town CTR. And these lines that I'm drawing would actually be drawn on either side of those dotted lines to identify the Special Rules area that we're talking about. If you read through this notice over here, it talks about all traffic flying outside of controlled airspace to the west, or to the west of the center line, that is, that we've just highlighted in red, will broadcast on frequency 125.8, and all traffic outside of controlled airspace to the east of that center line will broadcast on 124.8 megahertz. Broadcasting, of course, we did that in our Special Rules Part 1 series. We talked about traffic advising all users in that airspace of their intentions, and I gave an example of such a broadcast, which we'll do again just now as we go through the rest of the slides. So it seems quite simple if you look at it. There's a solid line with reference to the left or to the west and to the east with a frequency. Doesn't seem so complicated at all. But what we need to do is we need to look into this and go a little bit deeper into the airspace itself. First of all, identifying key elements such as what are the reporting points that you could use as a guideline to identify what is inside this Cape Town controlled airspace, the CTR, and what falls outside of it. Now, this notes here, if you continue reading in the AIP ENR 2.2 section, it talks about joining procedures for aircraft coming into the Cape Town CTR from the Special Rules area. And through that, it refers specifically to 3 areas which we need to highlight. And I just want to see if I can, there we go. I just needed to take off all the marking. So the first, the 3 sections that we're going to refer to is Kenilworth. So when they talk about Kenilworth, they're referring to the Kenilworth race course. There it is over there. Okay. Then the next section that they're referring to is the Bottleray Hills. So Bottleray Hills is just on this center line, this extremity of the Cape Town CTR. So this line going across here. And the hills are situated as a boundary reference point between controlled and uncontrolled airspace. Not very clearly marked on this aeronautical chart. And the third section that they're talking about is coastwise. So coastwise is a short section along here, which you can obviously see. But when they're talking about coastwise, they're actually referring more to coastwise coming in from the Muizenberg side or routing inbound from the Strand side, routing seawards of the coastline. When you're talking about this section up here, that I drew earlier, this section is, there's a procedure for the joining. So the chances of Cape Town ATC facilitating your joining request from the Cape Town Special Rules West area directly into the CTR It's not readily going to happen unless you possibly an emergency flight routing from west to east and you're requesting to cross the extended center line for runway 01. What would happen in this case is you're going to have to route through the military airspace, and when I say route through, you're going to have to get permission to route through the military airspace, and that military airspace is clearly marked again with this dotted lines, and that refers to your airspace airspace. Okay, it's on this chart. It's called airspace ATZ /CTR. I'm not going to get into the pedantics or about the airspace itself. We need to identify the procedures. Okay, so you'd be broadcasting on 125.8 and then contacting airspace for routing through the airspace, their frequency 125.6 megahertz. Remember, you can find all this information directly from an AIP or from the aeronautical chart or from your flying instructor, flying schools, local operators. airspace would then give you joining clearance through the airspace. So again, now let me just take this markings off here. So you're going to route through the airspace by whatever routing they give you. Their runway is runway 0220. On exiting their their controlled airspace to the south, you I actually drawn that line a bit too close to Cape Town's CTR. Let me just take it out again. Let's just draw this properly. So you're going to route clear of the Cape Town CTR and you're going to route ultimately to the Kenilworth Racecourse for joining. ATC will be using that as a key reference for the routing, both for traffic joining the CTR and for traffic exiting the CTR. So you can see what's very important here is while you're flying inside Cape Town's airspace, and obviously I'm just focusing on the west here at the moment. While you're flying inside this airspace, you are under control of ATC, so you're either speaking to ground or to tower, depends where you are you on the ground or in flight. But once you exit the CTR boundary, you're going into special rules. We already said it's 125.8. And this is a very dangerous area if you think about it, because traffic are entering controlled airspace, routing to Kenilworth, and traffic are exiting the airspace, routing towards Kenilworth as well. So when we're looking at the controlled airspace here, it's called Cape Town TMAA. So that's the airspace that falls directly above the CTR. So when you're exiting this the CTR, this line over here, you're exiting the CTR and you're going into Special Rules West area. It is very important for you to maintain a given height of 2,000 feet or below. Yeah, you can see that the Cape Town TMA starts at 2,500 feet. If you go through the AIP ENR section, ENR 2.2, it says that all VFR traffic routing in the special rules area, maximum height vertical is 2,000 feet. So that's to ensure that we have a 500-foot buffer between special rules and the lower limit of the Cape Town TMAA, i.e. controlled airspace approach control. Okay, so keep a good lookout when you're flying towards the Kenilworth area, because you're going to have traffic hovering in this area, orbiting, routing inbound or outbound from, and everybody should be talking on 125.8. You obviously also need to be speaking to Cape Town if you're routing inbound. So you're first going to speak to Cape Town when you way before Kenilworth to advise them of your intentions. Their frequency in this case would be Cape Town CTR, which is 118.1. Communicate with Cape Town Tower, advising of your intentions, and they'll hand you back over to the Special Rules West for broadcast. And it's very important that you update everybody as to your intentions and that you let everybody know that you're here in the Kenilworth area for the joining procedures. All right, so highlighting the Bottleray Hills, the Kenilworth Racecourse, which is quite clearly visible from the air as well. For all those people, those of you that have flown in the area, I'm sure you'll agree it's not too hard to identify. When you are operating to the west or to the east of this line, let's just put my red line in there again to indicate. So we're referring to that line, which is the dividing line for the special rules in west and east. Basically to the west and to the east, we're looking at an approximate distance of 50 nautical miles in either direction. To the north, we're looking at an approximate distance from the boundary of the Cape Town CTR of approximately 30 nautical miles. And to the south, so again in this direction here, that will just be to the border of the boundary of this Cape Town CTR and entering the what's called the danger airspace, the FAD 143, which belongs to the military. So this is not a perfect circle type airspace where it's exactly the same distance on either side, and in terms of the the frequencies that you're going to be broadcasting on, that it's all perfectly designed. It's very important for you to understand your airspace, know the local layout of the airspace, and that's why I said earlier, just looking at this aeronautical chart, it gives you a good idea as to the scope of the airspace itself. But if you do not know the geography of the area, you will struggle slightly with identifying where are the key points to the controlled airspace against the uncontrolled airspace, i.e. the special rules area. So if we, sorry, let me just rub myself off there. There we go. So if we're looking at to the, on this side, we're looking at the special rules area to the east. We have the Bottleray Hills area, as we said earlier, which is routing from approximately, I'm just struggling to see on this chart here. So it's somewhere over there. As I say, it's not very clearly marked over here. And at the Bottleray Hills, you've got the northern slopes and the southern slopes of the Bottleray Hills. Very important, those two reference points. Northern slopes is taking you more or less in the direction of Pasantekrol, and the southern slopes, so this point over here, is taking you not directly there, but it's taking you towards Stellenbosch, the Stellenbosch area. So ATC will give you the guideline as well, the reference. They're either going to tell you route via the northern slopes or route via the southern slopes of the Bottleray Hills. Sometimes they may not use that term, northern or southern. You will know, depending on which way you're routing, as to which part of the Bottleray Hills you have to route towards in order to route towards the direction that you headed. If we look, let me just rub that off. So taking that off, if we're routing along the seawards of the coastline, the third option that it said, so that's along here now, seawards of the coastline, and we want to do joining. In fact, let me just take that off because that's not 100% correct what I'm saying. If you want to join from here, so seawards, somehow I've changed to black now, but well, I'm just continuing. So you're routing in from Muizenberg, so that was coming in from here, or coming in from the Strand area. Then you're going to route seawards of the coastline, and it's very important there that one's not too complicated because obviously you've got the coastline as your guide reference. But what we're going to do shortly is explain things like the FAP 33 or 33, which is over here with that circle, which is a prohibited airspace, which you need to be well familiar with. Coming in from the Muizenberg side, you fairly, there's not too much to affect. You're going to call them either passing the beam of Muizenberg, but the majority of aircraft call them from this section over here. That's the Marina de Gama area, Sunflay, as some of the locals will know the area. And that's where you're going to call, or at least have called Cape Town for joining instructions by then. If not, and you call them over here, don't be surprised if they tell you to route to Kenilworth for joining, even though you're down here and you could join the airspace. You're giving them very short notice, so they're going to need to plan. Remember, they can't just accommodate you off the spot at times because the airspace is saturated with other IFR traffic. So in which case they're going to route you towards Kenilworth. Okay, I'm going to explain this FAP 33 shortly. I hope everyone is with me so far and understanding, has a bit of a better idea as to the area itself. So just to recap, special rules west 125.8, special rules east 124.8. The extremity vertical, the vertical height extremity for traffic within this airspace is 2,000 feet, and that's to ensure that there's a buffer of 500 feet between traffic in the special rules area and the lower limit of the Cape Town TMA. Local reference points: Kenilworth Racecourse, Bottleray Hills, and seawards of the coastline for traffic wishing to join the Cape Town CTR. ATC will also use those reference points for traffic exiting the CTR. There are other key reference points for the Cape Town CTR, but information you obtain from your flying school. It's local knowledge to identify with the outline, with the boundary of this airspace. If you are looking for further information on this, it's available for free on the Talking Radio website. Just go to the download section, www.talkingradio.co.za, and under the downloads, you'll find all the reference points you need for most of the controlled airfields in South Africa. Okay, I'm going across to the next slide to explain further. So with this slide 3, we're talking about, still there's the line, you can see it there in my fancy black pen now, and that line happens to be going through, and that's obviously the split for the special rules area, is going through the FAD 200. So the FAD 200 stands for the Delta 200, and that's a general flying training area. So what's very significant here to take note of is that although you are going to be flying either to the west or to the east of this dividing line for special rules, remaining clear of controlled airspace, all traffic that's going to route inside the proximity of the FAD 200 is going to have to change frequency to that area's specific frequency. In this case, it's a GF, it's a general flying area, civilian training area. So if you look on the next slide, this is extracted directly out of the ARP ENR section 5. This section gives you the limits to the airspace itself, from ground to 2,000 feet, and that is to the southern side of the CTR, of the general flying area, and to the north from ground to 4,000 feet. So you can see it steps up. Let me just go back. I can't go back a slide now. That steps up in terms of the airspace that you are flying in this case, the GF. And for that area, their frequency is 124.4. So here it is, again, I can show it better now. There you can see the airspace going in a kind of a northerly direction, and it splits. Let me just draw the whole GF so you can see it coming down, coming along there, and down to there. This section over here is ground to 2,000 feet, so that's this section over here. And then the section on this side, as I refer to, is ground to 4,000 feet. So very important, inside here, even though you're to the west or east of the center line for the special rules area designated, you will be broadcasting your intentions on 124.4. Key reference point there is Atlantis. So I'll just draw a line around it. For traffic operating in this area, remember this is uncontrolled. So what we need to look at here in terms of special rules, it's also uncontrolled. But generally, traffic flying in the special rules area are routing from one point to another. So they're normally flying straight and level. Traffic in the general flying area are routing there to go and do training, general flight training. So when you're flying in this area, you normally expect the unexpected, although I'm not saying you mustn't expect the unexpected in the special rules area, because we are dealing with various types of aircraft, different types of operations, and anything can happen in these airspaces. So it's so important for you when you're flying in any special rules area that you ensure that you broadcast your intentions and keep all traffic advised of your movement throughout. All right, so let's move on. For this section over here, or this slide, I just wanted to highlight this section over here. So that's Seal Island. And I wanted to make you well aware that the Seal Island falls inside the Cape Town CTR and not in the special rules area. So if you intend specifically flying a scenic flight in the Seal Island area, you need permission from Cape Town ATC. So you need to be in contact with ATC either prior or prior to liftoff or prior to departure or prior to entering the CTR. You can't just enter that airspace without permission. Now, this is also quite important to note that this hatchery, so these lines that are all along here, okay, I'm just drawing two there as an example. Everything that's inside of that hatchery is called the FAR 149. So this is what we referred to earlier. This is military airspace. It's restricted. Once again, straight out of your AIP ENR Section 5. This is referring to military airspace. Now, you need permission from the military to enter this airspace. You also need to know when they are active and when they're inactive, whether you're entering this airspace or not. So before you get airborne, find out, have a look at your NOTAMs, Notice to Airmen, contact Cape Town Air Traffic Control and ask them, is the FAR 149 active? And they'll be able to tell you straight away. This will ensure that you do not enter this airspace unannounced, especially when they're operational. And during operational, they could be doing numerous exercises. There's nothing, they don't have to be very specific as to what they're going to do to the general aviation community. They can conduct their training within that airspace within a specified time frame. And through the interaction through a NOTAM, all the information is already supplied there. So rather than be surprised, identify with procedures prior to getting airborne, and take note as well that the FAR 149 stretches almost all the way down towards Cape Point, as you can see by this corner picture, this corner reference over here. It's pretty much all the way down towards Cape Point, and then coming across here towards Springle Bay in the False Bay area. This is a serious amount of airspace that you need to be aware of. While we're on this slide, so just some other key reference points here. Take note that the FAR 144 from ground to 2,000 feet, let's just draw a line around it. That's the Cape of Good Hope, so the Cape Point Nature Reserve, this area here, also with the hatcheries as indicated. You're not allowed to fly over the reserve lower than 2,000 feet altitude as indicated. So although it falls in the special rules area, you need to fly around it. Okay? You can't fly through it. And remember, you can't fly here above 2,000 feet, because then we are starting to enter the Cape Town TMA, and we need to avoid that airspace. So in terms of flying special rules, be very strict on yourself. Do your homework, identify with procedures to be managed, and altitudes that you're restricted to, and of course, most importantly, the frequency that you should be on when flying in that area. Okay, if we just go to the next slide. Now, on this next slide here, I just wanted to, you've seen the slide before when I referred to the Seal Island. Now what I want to just identify, or allow you to identify with, is if you're flying in the Special Rules West area, so I'm flying seawards of the coastline here, and I wish to continue with my flight remaining seawards of the coastline, and I want to route to the eastern side. So I want to go basically from 125.8 to 124.8 in the southern area. Then what I'm going to have to do is get permission. Sorry, man. Getting too active with this pen of mine. So what you would need to do is you'd need to get permission from Cape Town ATC to route through their through their controlled airspace. And once you are clear of the controlled airspace and clear of this prohibited airspace, which I'll explain now, and you cleared, and they tell you to continue with TIBA, then you would go from 125.8 to 124.8. If you've never heard of the word TIBA before, so this is in the AIC. TIBA stands for Traffic Information Broadcast by All Aircraft, and TIBA includes uncontrolled frequencies such as 124.4, which is your general flying area, and 124.8, which is generally a frequency used throughout South Africa for traffic flying below 1,500 foot AGL in uncontrolled airspace. And it just so happens that the special rules area has also got that frequency to the east, 124.8. So it includes the special rules area frequencies as well. So if you ever hear that term being used, you know that the person or the party is operating on one of those particular uncontrolled airspace frequencies. All right. Also, very important, you shouldn't, if you're routing along here, don't sneak through this airspace and route through Cape Town CTR. That's not the right thing to do. You need to communicate with Cape Town. Remember, they've got controlled aircraft or traffic entering their controlled airspace, coming to land on runway 01. They're coming right through your flight path and you're affecting their flight path. So they don't know about you, neither does ATC. Communication is important. Unless you have a radio failure, keep your communication open at all times. In other words, maintain two-way communication, either with ATC, in this case, flying through the controlled airspace, or broadcast your intentions on the relevant special rules frequency for all traffic in your area. All right, now we go on to our next slide. Let's see if it's going for me. And there we go. So on this one, this was just to highlight again, straight from AIP ENR Section 5, prohibited airspace. You have a lot of FAP, FAR, and FAD airspaces within your Cape Town Special Rules area. This one is your FAP prohibited. So FAP 33 means no aircraft allowed to fly into this airspace at all. And there's your reference from the ground. Geographical reference is Macassar Beach. And if we go on to the next slide, it tells us a little bit about the FAP 33. So if we look down at the end, it says FAP 33 Fir Grove, and it specifies no person shall in any aircraft whatsoever fly into this area. So you have to avoid that area. If you're not sure where it is, as I said earlier, get an aeronautical chart, ask people, speak to ATC, and identify with us. When you're planning your flight, it's way better to plan it on the ground and work your flight so that you're going to avoid these airspaces rather than getting airborne and then finding out that you actually have entered an airspace without permission. All right, so your reference back to the AIP is crucial, but I'm not saying that you have to purchase or own an AIP. There are flying schools out there and there are operators, and of course there's the Civil Aviation Authority that can always help you with these type of questions. Pre-plan, very important. Right, I brought this slide into it as well. Was once again, we're flying on the Special Rules West area, and yeah, you'll notice it says the FAR 39, FAR 39. And in this airspace, what's important to take note of is we are going to, if we're flying over there and we're routing along seawards of the, we're routing inland, so we're not routing seawards of the coastline, because that would take us into military restricted, the FAR 149, which we mentioned earlier. We are not allowed again to enter Simonstown's airspace, even though we fly in Special Rules West. So we would need to fly around this airspace. But as you remember earlier, if we fly around it, we're going to fly in the direction of the Cape Point Nature Reserve. So it becomes a bit difficult routing around this airspace and avoiding. So what a lot of traffic do, fortunately enough, I have flown in this airspace myself during my PPL training. A lot of traffic route this way, and they route through the go through Sun Valley and come out on the other side by Noordhoek. So you bypass all of this restrictions as such. Makes your flight path much easier, and then you can obviously continue up on the western side of the well, staying on the Special Rules West, but route on the western side of the 12 Apostles, routing towards Table Mountain, and then come back to Cape Town through or getting permission from a supply, just as an example. Okay, so I'm just giving examples. I'm not saying that you must do this type of flying. I'm saying you need to be aware again of your airspaces, and don't just imagine that this is a Special Rules with this one line just coming down the center, and as long as you fly to or stay within 50 nautical miles to the west or east of that center line, that you just broadcast on 125.8 or 124.8 and just go flying into yonder. You need to be very aware of your geography, of the surroundings, and of your vertical limits. All right. This explains in detail again the FAR 39. It's giving you information. It tells you in this case it's a naval base, and that again, no person shall without prior authorization fly aircraft into this area. So the difference between the previous slide with the FAP and the FAR is it says you can get permission to fly here, but in order to do so, you have here contact the commanding officer in Simonstown, Silvermine, or of any person designated by him. Okay, should say by them. So that gives you an idea that there's, in terms of the airspace design, there's procedures for each, whether it's controlled or uncontrolled, and you need to manage that accordingly. Right, so please stay with us for a live question and answer session should you have any related questions. And I did unfortunately miss out on one section, which was on the Kontermanskloof area. And I'm not in charge of this recording with this machine that I'm trying to work from. So I'm going to mention it briefly in my live session. I'll talk about it outside of this recording. So looking forward to chatting to you all in due course. Thank you very much for attending. Please also just listen out. Hi everybody, welcome back. Hope you enjoyed that recording. So as we mentioned there earlier, I don't know if you've seen it, but if there is any questions that you may want to completion of the special rules area. So I mentioned before we started I missed one or two things in that recording. I just want to discuss it now and give you further brief as to explanations of the airspace itself. So I can't draw on this one. This is a PowerPoint presentation. Just look to the northern or to the top of your screen, and there where it says Kontermanskloof. That's particularly important, and I also met with air traffic control. I'm aware of the airspace, but I met with them just to find out what is happening with that area. Has there been any procedures that have changed in order to be prepared for this webinar? They've advised me, and it's pretty much been standard like this for years. Kontermanskloof is, as you can see, border of the Cape Town CTR, and on the eastern side of the special rules dividing line. So it's a bit of a catch-22 because it's actually uncontrolled airspace. It's inside of, on the borderline of a controlled sector, in this case Cape Town CTR. Space for Kontermanskloof goes from ground to 1,300 feet. And what happens there is if you wish to operate in that airspace, you need to contact Cape Town ATC and get prior permission, which they say at the moment is they're not experiencing that. So it's actually a bit of a to be flying in. So they've got procedures for done from the north to maintain height over that area. But from your side, if you are operating in that area, remember that if the is for say, for example, you have phoned ATC and are now able to fly in that airspace, gotten permission, broadcasting on still on 124.8, but the airspace would, in this case, it would be a class G airspace. Okay, so if you understand what I'm saying there is that portion of the Cape Town CTR will fall away, and it now becomes under not the control, but it becomes under airspace. In other words, special rules E cast your intentions on it, and that section of controlled airspace has thus fallen away from Cape Town for that period. Once you go back to, once you deactivate that airspace, once they've been informed, talking about ADC, and now then it would go back to Class C. But in all instances, we're still going to broadcast on the special rule frequency. So that's very important to take note of. And then if you look to the bottom of your screen, so I with traffic routing series of the coastline, ATR from west to east. So basically going from Muizenberg on your way to Strand. just remember that when you're routing through that section of airspace, you're going to obviously be speaking to Cape Town, in this case probably the type frequency 118.10, and you're not going to be speaking on 125.8. But the idea for you while transiting seawards of the coastline through that airspace to still listen out, if you're able to, depends if you have a second com radio, to still listen out on the specific special rules frequency for west or east, because there might be traffic routing towards you that are not familiar with this airspace, and yet so they're abiding with the special rules frequency, but they don't realize that they're actually transiting through in this case, Cape Town CTR. Then staying on the southern diagram, and we go back now to the FAD 149. That's basically the whole section of the False Bay, excluding, of course, as we said in the recording, was Seal Island and the Cape Town CTR. Recording, you need to get permission, or is this airspace active? If it is active, you need to get permission to enter that airspace. If the airspace is not operational, and let's say you are flying out between, say, Muizenberg to Seal Island, remember that you're, not all the way to Seal Island, unless you get permission from ATC, but if you fly anywhere along that area, then the frequency is going to be 125.8 or 124.8. But as soon as the airspace becomes military, the frequency, until it becomes operational, should I say, from the military side, then they will designate the frequency that they're going to work from their control sector. That's why it's very important for you to ATC prior to find out, is that airspace active? Rather a flight seawards of the coastline, or should I say staying inland on 125.8 and routing down towards Muizenberg. It's definitely worth your while trying to find out, is this airspace active or not. So now I'm just leaving it open to the floor for a minute or two. I just want to see if guys in the room have got any. So waiting, I'm just also putting up one of our special offers, and that's on the restricted RT audio download. Today, we making it available at 50%. That's important, obviously, to focus on your RT skills and communication in uncontrolled airspace. All right, is there any questions from the room? A couple of seconds to see if anybody's going to type something up before I continue. Okay, no, I don't see any questions coming. That must mean that I'm giving a really good presentation, or maybe it's a bit overwhelming. There's a whole lot of information to take in here with this airspace. So maybe while you're thinking, I'll just add another 2 or 3 things on the special rules area. So if you look into the eastern side, let's just talk about the Stellenbosch airspace. Remember that that's falling now on the eastern side of the hills. Their frequency is 109.3 megahertz and 109.30 megahertz. Just remember that if you're going to be flying within the sector of Stellenbosch, and of course for Santa Cruz, which is not too far from Stellenbosch, that they've got their own designated frequencies. So just as my presentation I've given with Johannesburg special rules area, if you plan to enter those airspaces, AIP, and make sure the frequency prior to entering, in other words, do not enter those designated airfields with all broadcasting on the special rules east frequency in this instance, because the worst thing that can happen for you to fly into an airspace in that situation would be to have frequency set. So in other words, you are a master of your communication and you're saying everything correctly and what you've been taught, but when you flying in that area, you're speaking on the wrong frequency. And obviously that's not going to facilitate the the flight and the safety aspect of it. And it's taking everything it's practiced and it's thrown it out the window. So back to the question box, and just any other questions from you guys before we continue. Are there any in the room? Can anybody let us know? Is there any drone pilots or anybody involved with drones? I see that we do. We've just been advised that there is a slight delay feed that's going out. I apologize for that, and I'll just wait for a few seconds for you guys to catch up with us in the studio. Yeah. Okay, so okay, so I'm back again. I'm just been basically giving you guys a chance to catch up with our live transmission. I'm not sure where you are in the recording. Sorry, in the studio. But thank you for everybody so far on the voting. So far, it seems like there's a competition between Elizabeth and Derb's special rules area broadcast, which will fall under our part 3 section of uncontrolled airspaces in South Africa. And you guys also listening for Cape Town, I did mention it in the recording. If you're looking for any the viewings for Cape Town, remember they're available as a free download on our website. So just go to www.talkingradio.co.za, click on free downloads, and then just look for Cape Town, and you'll be able to pick up, in the webinar, I just talk about the Kenilworth race course and Bottler Hills, because that's kind of what's been identified in the AIP. But there are a host of other for reporting points that it's worth your while becoming familiar with, especially if you can fly around the extremity of the Cape Town CTR. Right, so we also going to put up, we asked earlier if there are any drone pilots in the room, because we've had a lot of requests from drone pilots as to the design of the airspace, specifically in Cape Town, and it seems like there's a lot of activity taking the area specific to shootings, recording, should I say, and not shootings, it doesn't sound so good, and advertising, marketing, and so on. So we also thought, okay, if there's anybody out there, we've just put up a special offer right now, 50% off on a RSC facilitation, crazy offer special for the month of May. So if you're interested, please select that offer now. The normal price for just over 29,000 offer will include VAT. The total price is 14,500 Rand. And that's a very good price. It's a crazy price. In fact, the average market out there selling the RSC packages for an amount for approximately 55,000 Rand up per person. So we're keeping that going for now. So if you're interested, just click on this offer. It will take you through to where you have to go and sign you. All right, I don't see any coming up from the room, but of course, if you have any questions after this as we go along, please don't or please make use of our facility. Email me, dylan@talkingradio.co.za, and I'll gladly assist whatever the query may be. If you can't get hold of me, obviously you can always speak to Cape Town ADC as well, 021-9116-4125, and they'll be able to assist you as well. So it's definitely worth your while keeping a good working relationship with them if you intend to fly within the proximity of their airspace. Remember, something else that you can consider, it's not often used, but people flying within the vicinity of vicinity of controlled airspace, in this case the Cape Town CTR. How about giving ATC a call before you conduct your exercise, and just let them know you're going to be operating within 3 miles of their controlled sector. They can advise traffic routing outbound or traffic. You are speaking to them on their frequency about your location. So it's just another way of ensuring that you are working towards, with ADC, working towards maintaining a safer sky and safety in the airspace. If there's nothing further from the room, I'm going to be signing off shortly. Thank you very much for your participation. If you go back to the poll, it looks like a bit of a... Oh, I see Port Elizabeth has moved across. So Port Elizabeth in first place in this poll for 67%, Durban 33%, and George 0%. So obviously Port Elizabeth, the one I'm going to be doing. Please look out for our notification, and we'll let you know as soon as possible when the next webinar is going to be going live, and then obviously it's going to be on Port Elizabeth. Thank you very much for your attendance, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon. Till then, Molly signing out. Cheers.